Hello YouTube, it's your boy Deformed Pig back at it with another Sabaton review. I posted yesterday my review of The Art of War and Metalizer. To sum it up, I gave Metalizer a 7 out of 10, and I gave The Art of War a 9.8 out of 10. So if you haven't seen those, check those reviews out. Alright, now I'm going to be reviewing Coat of Arms, which now it actually makes sense to wear the shirt. This is like just look at it, look at the full shirt. It's just like this and that tiny logo right there. It's like, okay, thanks for this shirt. Anyways, to the review, I'm going to be reviewing Coat of Arms by Sabaton, which is their 5th studio album. I can count to 5. So not waste any more time, let's get right into my general thoughts. So what do I think? It's a pretty good, solid album. It feels like a good continuation to The Art of War, even though it doesn't nearly match The Art of War. And it doesn't do much new. It's kind of just like, it's obviously not as bad as Terra Dominatus in terms of not doing anything new or being kind of repetitious, but it definitely doesn't experiment too much, really. But it's still a pretty good, solid album. It definitely does have a lot of glaring flaws in it that I will talk about. But yeah, so some of the issues I have is it's badly produced. In my opinion, The Art of War was actually an album that was better produced, and that came out like 2 years before this one. That's like inexcusable. I could excuse it for Metalizer, kind of, because that came out in 2002 technically and was their first studio album, but this is their 5th studio album in 2010. I can't excuse it. It sounds worse than The Art of War, which came out 2 years prior. And then, yeah, that's what I have in my notes. And then another thing about it is it doesn't have a real flow. In The Art of War, my album review, I said that I felt like the album had such a great flow where all the songs felt like they were really flowing together to make a great album. It felt like a great selection of songs that formed a great album. And this time it feels like a great selection of songs that's forming a pretty good album. I feel like that's the best way to describe it. What I mean by that is it'll go from a slower song about Poland during the Nazi occupation, which is Uprising, to then straight into a super fast song, which is Screaming Eagles, and then back into another slower song about the Holocaust. It's like, it flip-flops too much. That's what I kind of mean by that. That's the best way I can describe it without you actually listening to the album. So if you want to listen to the album, it's still not my recommend, but I will get to that at the end of the video. So it's definitely not a bad album by any means, but it's not very well produced, and I don't really think it tried anything new or unique. However, one thing I will say is it has some of their best riffs, like Saboteurs has an amazing riff that's probably one of my favorite riffs by them. Screaming Eagles is not that great. Coat of Arms, Midway, they all have great riffs on them. I think the best way to describe this is it's the Iron Man 2 to the Art of War's Iron Man 1, kind of. I feel like that's the best way that I can describe that. Also, I'm pretty sure this album is their shortest. It clocks in at just under 50 minutes with only 10 tracks. That's pretty, actually it clocks in just under 40 minutes, what am I saying? It's really short, and all the songs are also more about, obviously you have some songs like Uprising, which are about much bigger events in World War II, but it also has some, it doesn't, lyrical-wise, focuses not so much on the epic battles that the Art of War was depicting, so I feel like just me personally, that kind of loses my attention, but if you're not a big lyrics guy, that probably won't matter that much to you. Anyways, that's my kind of overall thoughts. Now let's get into the track by track. So, starts off with the self-titled Coat of Arms, which is one of their really underrated songs. I think it's underrated. I absolutely love the song. It's an amazing, energetic opener. I love how it kind of starts off with the kind of in the background synth before going into the build-up, before going into the main riff, then straight into the song. It's amazing. It's an amazing opener with, so obviously the lyrics being about Greeks during war, which, I mean, I love. 300 is a great movie. I love that movie. Just Sparta in general. I'm a Pantheon main on League of Legends. That kind of stuff is just like super cool, and I really like that. So it's just it's a song that appeals to me a lot, lyrical wise and musical wise. It appeals to me a lot. Then it goes to my favorite track on the album, number 2, which is Midway, easily my favorite track of the album, and one of their most underrated. I absolutely love it, from the opening riff with the kick drum kind of going into the build up, and then pretty sure lyrical wise it's about a battle between the U.S. and the Japanese in World War II, and the Battle of Midway, I believe it was called. Keep adjusting my hair a lot, and I absolutely love it. It's a very underrated, amazing song. The riff is kind of heavy, headbanging. It's an excellent song. I highly recommend it. It's underrated. Listen to it. Then it goes to Uprising, which is one of their more popular songs on this album. It's an amazing track with great lyrical themes, and it's obviously the slower. When I refer to like epic Sabaton songs, I mean the ones that are slower, have the riff, they start off with the opening riff, then they go into the verse which is just bass and synth most of the time. Then it goes into chorus, verse, chorus, bridge, changes key for the last chorus. That's what I mean. You have Last Stand does that, Bismarck, Uprising, as I just said, Wolfpack, pretty much songs like those. So this is obviously one of the epics of the album because there's pretty sure two. And it's obviously, like I said, it's one of their more popular songs, and I can understand why it's a popular song. I love it. I love the midsection on it. It's a great song. I like it. And then it goes straight from Uprising to Screaming Eagles, which is probably my second favorite track of the album. It's the speed song of the album, which when I'm referring to speed songs, I mean like The Line from the North, Nuclear Attack, songs like those. So this is obviously the speed song of that album. And it's a great energetic song, and I love the midsection when it just starts off with the bass, and then it adds in the guitars and the vocals. That's a really underrated midsection. I love it. I really like the song, and it's once again one of their more popular songs on the album, and I like that it's one of their more popular songs because I really love it. I think it's a great track. And then it goes into The Final Solution, which is a good slower song, but it's outshadowed by being too close on the album to Uprising, which I think was a song that was done much better. And also, this is kind of shows where the album, as I was talking about earlier, doesn't have quite the flow. Like, it just feels like they had the tracks and they just kind of slapped them in a random order, and I feel like that takes a lot away from it, in my opinion. And then it goes from The Final Solution, which is, as I said, a pretty good slower song that's outshadowed by Uprising, to number 6, which is Aces in Exile. This album doesn't have a lot of tracks, it only has 10. It's a pretty good song, but ultimately forgettable and doesn't really stand out. I mean, in their discography and in this album, it doesn't do much. I mean, I don't feel like I wasted my time listening to this song, but I wouldn't listen to this song for fun, really. It's okay. That's the best way to describe it. Then it goes to Saboteurs, which I love the opening riff. It's a somewhat underrated track, but the opening riff is easily the best part of it. It's just, I love the opening riff. Just listen to it right now. It's such a great riff. It's one of their best, if not probably their best. It's underrated song, underrated riff. I love it. So it goes from Saboteurs to, get ready for me to mispronounce this title, Wehrmacht. I'm pretty sure I'm pronouncing that right. Wehrmacht. I like the opening to it with the kind of build-up, like the dun, dun, dun. Why am I saying? I'm not going to try that again, but you know what I mean if you know the song. In the almost Middle Eastern verse, kind of. It's another pretty good song on this album. And then obviously, so I think it's a pretty good song. I love the opener, and I love the almost Middle Eastern kind of verses. So it goes from that to White Death, which is another song with a great opening riff, but a mediocre rest of the song. It has a great final chorus with the overlapping vocals, but overall, it's kind of like, it starts good, ends good, but everything else in the middle is kind of like, eh. And then it goes to White Death to Metal Ripper, and I'm going to read what my notes say. No, period. It's trying to be Metal Crew, the Metal Machine on the album, kind of, but it isn't nearly on those levels. It's kind of a dull album closer, but the chorus is pretty good in it, but that's the case for most Sabaton songs. So that's pretty much my track by track. Sorry that it's not very long, but there's not a lot of tracks, and some of them, like Metal Ripper, where some of them have good moments on them, like the opening of Saboteurs, the riff, the opening of Wehrmacht, and the verses, the opening riff of White Death, and the final chorus. But my main issue is, what it comes down to, is it doesn't feel like it has a good flow to it. So I'm going to give pretty much what my final thoughts say, and it says, Coat of Arms isn't really trying to reinvent the wheel. It doesn't reinvent the wheel, but it doesn't feel like it's trying to. It has some of their best riffs, easily, but the album just has no flow, and overall, coming after the amazing Art of War, it just feels kind of like a disappointment. It feels like a sequel to The Art of War that doesn't quite live up to it. I mean, it's hard to definitely come up with something as good as The Art of War, and in my opinion, they probably still haven't done that to this day. It's a great selection of songs, but they don't form a great album. So like Primo Victoria and The Art of War, they were great selections of songs that were in the perfect order to form a great album. Even Atero Dominatus, I don't know, I got it right for the review and I haven't gotten it right since. But even that, I feel like, had a good flow of the songs and where they should have been. This album just has no flow. It feels like something if I would put a bunch of random Sabaton songs on shuffle on a playlist, and then that's how they form this order. It's just, and the production, I mean, it just sounds, for a 2010 album, an album that came out years after, the only album that comes to my mind right now is 2008's Shogun by Trivium, The Sound of Madness by Shinedown. It comes after so many albums that even The Art of War, it sounds more terribly produced than that, and that came out 2 years earlier. It's just, I'm happy that for the next album, Carlos Rex, they massively stepped up the quality of the production, but overall, it's just the album doesn't feel like it has a great flow. It doesn't feel the best produced, and for an album that has 10 songs, only a few of them really stand out. The only ones that are super stand out, in my opinion, are the first four, which is Coat of Arms, Midway, Uprising, and Screaming Eagles. But that's not even half the album. Obviously, songs like The Final Solution or Saboteurs are pretty good songs, but they're ultimately, in the grand scheme of things, with the exception of the riff for White Saboteurs, I meant, they're ultimately kind of forgettable. It's short, which I like about it. If this was super long, I probably would have not liked it. I probably would have liked it less. But overall, I feel like it's an appropriate length, which is terrible production and just not the greatest flow of songs. So my overall score for the Coat of Arms by Sabaton is a 7.7 out of 10, and that might sound kind of harsh because I described liking most of the songs, and yeah, I like them, but I don't love them. They didn't flow together to make a great album like Prima Victoria did, or like The Art of War did, or like later albums like The Last Stand or Carlos Rex did. It just overall, I'd consider this probably like the midpoint in the midway in their discography. Kind of like you have a few albums below it and you have a few albums above it. Beloved, below and above. What I meant to say is you have a few albums below it, you have a few albums above it. It's overall not, I don't think it's a bad album at all, but it's just coming after The Art of War, and even compared to the later albums, with the exception of Heroes, probably a disappointing addition to their discography that has great songs. I would highly recommend listening to the first 4 songs and The Final Solution, but overall, it's just kind of meh. Anyways, that's my review for Coat of Arms by Sabaton. I think later today my review of Carlos Rex should be up. Anyways, you'll know about that when that comes up. Anyways, thank you for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see all you wonderful people in the next video. Thank you.